Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about your rock, paper, scissors project. So this project is going to use dictionaries, which you just recently learned. Basically, this is a two-player game where one player can choose between rock, papers, and scissors, and same with the other player, and the computer will check who wins. So I have a example code written down right here. We'll go from the top and I'll explain each piece. This first piece is a dictionary, which I defined globally. This means that this dictionary is available to me anywhere in this code. So as you can see here, each of these IDs in this dictionary have two letters, either R, S, or P, which all stands for rock, papers, and scissors. The way we want to check who won is by putting player 1's choice over here and putting player 2 choice in the second letter of the ID. So when we check what is held in this sort of ID, we will get the results. Now let me elaborate. So let's start at the function start game. This is the function that's going to basically start the game as it says, and it's going to ask the user the question, would they like to play the game of rock, paper, scissors? They can answer with yes or no. Then we'll go ahead and check whether that prompt, would they like to play a game, is yes. If that's yes, then we run all of this code here, which I'll explain in a second. If they press no, then we have an else statement right here that just prints, okay, we can play again sometime else, and it ends the code. Now, when they press yes, or when they press the letter Y, we run a while true loop. Now this is important to the game. This loop has to be a while true loop because we cannot repeatedly play the game if the condition isn't true all the time. Now I'll explain why in a second. When we run the while true loop, we'll ask two prompts. A prompt for player 1 and a prompt for player 2 to pick their choice of rock, paper, or scissors. Then we create a variable which is going to hold the string concatenation of both of these variables. So what I mean by that is whatever input you get, which is stored in prompt 1 and prompt 2, we're going to use the upper function or upper method on it and then concatenate them together and store it in this variable permutation. This is important because, like I said at the start of the video, this dictionary will use IDs like RS or RR to check who wins or if it's a tie. So when we concatenate both of these prompt 1 and prompt 2 together, the ID will either be sent as RS, RR, RP, and so on, and whatever string that ID holds is what it's going to be printed. I'll give you a demonstration in a second. So after we create the variable permutation by by concatenating both of these inputs, we're going to print permutation holder, which is the dictionary name, and we're going to use the index string of permutation, which is this variable right here. So now it's going to try to compare this ID to one of these IDs up here. Whatever this one, whatever this one is equal to is the string that's going to be printed. Then here comes the important part. After all of that, we're going to have a variable called ask, which is the input, which is going to ask the user if they want to keep playing. If they press no, then we're going to use the keyword break to end the while true loop. So a a few seconds ago, I had mentioned how while true is extremely important because this while loop has to say true at all times. We can't have a condition here. This is because if there was a condition up here, we won't be able to really ask the player if they want to keep playing, because then it really wouldn't matter, because even if they said yes or even if they said no, the while true would keep going until a condition is satisfied. But in this case, the condition is never satisfied because it's always true. It's never false. So when the user finally says no, they don't want to play anymore, then you will use break and it will break the while loop. And in the same manner, we also have an else statement to see if they don't say no, we're going to use the keyword continue, which means just keep the loop going as long as the condition is true, which is all the time. So that's the gist of the code behind the game. Let me give you a demonstration of how it will work. So the first prompt pops up and it's going to ask us if we want to play the game or not. Now I'll just demonstrate by saying, no, I don't want to play the game. So it's going to say, okay, we can play sometime else, and it's going to end the code because there's nothing else after this if sentence. So now we're going to play this again, and in this case, we're going to say yes. It's going to put up the first prompt for player 1. I'm going to choose paper, and for player 2, I will choose scissors. So as you can see here, with both of these inputs given, the code took both of these inputs, put it together, which is what this line is right here. It took prompt1 dot upper, which is uppercase P, plus prompt2 dot upper, which is uppercase S, and put them together. So now permutation, the variable permutation, basically equals to a string PS. So this variable right now equals to this string right here, or this string right here. So now when we use that ID here in permutation holder and then the ID PS, the code is going to check in this dictionary where PS is. So it would go all the way down here. We found PS. And what does PS hold? It holds this string player 2 wins. So it's going to print that string. So we got that result right here. And let's check if that result is true. Player 2 had scissors. Player 1 has paper. Scissors beats paper. So player 2 does indeed win. So that's what I meant by using the ID to check what the result should be. So now, here comes the important part. Would you like to keep playing? This is the prompt that basically acts as a condition for the while loop. If I say no, then it says thanks for playing, and it will use this break and end the while loop. If I play again really quickly, let's see. If I play again really quickly, go R tie. If I say yes, I want to keep playing, then it's going to use the continue keyword, and it's going to start back at the top of the while true loop, and it's going to go all the way down again. So here we can see it started with prompt 1 again, with player 1. I'm going to pick R and R again. So it's going to say tie, and now it's going to ask the same question again. This time I'll say no, and then it'll finally end. This is what I meant by looping the while true until you set the condition. So this is the basic gist of the game. Now this is a really raw version of the code, which means there's a lot of bugs that could happen in the code itself. Like I do not have a fail-safe code. Like I do not have a check to see whether the player types in something other than yes or no, or types in something other than R, P, or S. These are the sort of bug fixes you guys will have to implement in your code. once you create your own project, you'll have to make sure the users always have to type in the right letter or word before you execute the code. You can also use the new line character to make your game menu look a bit better. So in this case, we can have this input and we'll have a new line at the start of the next input. This means that once this input is printed on screen, the prompt 1 won't be printed right after this first line. There will be an extra space and then this prompt. And we can do the same thing for up here. Now remember, since we're printing a variable, you can't just put a new line right next to it because that won't count as anything. You have to concatenate a new line onto that variable, just like this. So we can also do it right here. Now everything has new lines. Let's check out how it will look. There you go. So you can see it's much nicer to look at. So yeah, you can have a game menu like this. You can also have, something like a bunch of dashes right after the "would you like to play a game of rock paper scissors," just to show that the user has now entered the game and is not in the main menu anymore. And yeah, things like that. Alright, that's it for today's video. In the next video, you'll be doing the text adventure game part 3.